Hey, good morning, everybody. This is People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm your host, Olga Woltman, and I'm thrilled to welcome Maddie Nance as my guest today. She's a founder of a company called Kind Word, which we'll talk about quite a bit. She's a fundraiser, she's a writer, she's been in this space, so please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline, but I was just telling Olga that I go by Maddie a lot, so if that's easier, you can certainly call me Maddie. So as Olga said, I've been in this nonprofit space for a long time, so 15 years, 16 years, but half of that was in-house at organizations. I've worked at several different organizations as a fundraising manager, and then the other half of that has been working for myself through my writing business, which is called Kind Word.
So can you talk a little bit about fundraising, which includes a lot of different aspects? It includes a lot of conversations with people. It includes planning. It includes many different things. And you decided to really focus on writing aspect. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So to give you a little bit of background of my journey. So it's like I started really broad. So I have worked in just about every area of fundraising, overseeing all of it. So, whether it's major donors or massive appeals, bequests, events, all of that. So I've done it all. But over time, what I've done is I've niched it down. So especially since working for myself, I realized I love the writing part. And there's a huge need there for writers who also know fundraising. Because it's different. I think anyone can say that it's different. There's a specialty to fundraising writing, and so that's really where I've moved into the space I've moved into now. So most of my time now is in writing for fundraising, or it's training fundraising teams on how to communicate through their writing.
So you mentioned in passing massive appeals, and I'm going to keep a track record of philanthropic charitable words that are different in US from Australia and New Zealand. So massive appeals. So for all of you, that's direct mail.
Yep. Mass appeal. So yeah, I'm still learning this as well. So I've been living in the US for 2 years, and I'm coming across words where I'm like, what is that? And I have to go translate it back. Oh, it means this in Australia. Or I'll find myself using a word that we use in Australia that isn't used over here. So when I say mass appeals, that's direct mail, direct response. So usually it's direct mail, email, social media, all wrapped up into one big appeal campaign. And that's when you're talking to thousands of people as opposed to sit down with a major donor. Yeah.
And major gifts are called significant gifts. I believe that's the case.
Yeah, we normally say major gifts, major giving. Okay. Yeah.
All right. We'll keep like a little glossary that we can share with everybody. So can you talk a little bit about you said fundraising writing is different. I could not agree more. What makes an effective fundraising appeal?
I think so much I can say. It's like where to begin. So one thing I will say, because I have a lot of other writers in my network, and I love talking to other writers who work in different industries and hearing about the differences or the things we do the same. But one thing that really stands out to me is for a fundraising writer, we don't have a physical product that we're giving someone. It's not a transaction of like, I'm writing marketing copy where it's like, yes, for $9.99, you will get this, and you get this physical thing arrive on your doorstep. So it's like a swap. But in fundraising writing, you don't have that tangible product. So it's more like what you're doing is you're asking someone to make a decision in their heart to support something, to support an idea, or to get on board with something and feel involved with it. And that is something I don't know that another industry where like there's elements of that, but where it's just that.
Yeah. It's more emotional reward and just intangibles.
Exactly. And that's why, to answer your question, I always start with emotion with fundraising writing, because it's because like I said, it's a decision in somebody's heart. They have to make it for themselves. So that I always start with emotion, and then I back that up with the brain, like the rational thinking, the stats and the facts. So it's going your emotional storytelling first, then it's the rational next, and then you can go for the ask of what you want that person to do.
So the flip side of this, what makes fundraising appeals not perform as we expect and ineffective? What are some things to avoid?
I think when it's not done in that order. So a lot of times there's the temptation to do the rational stuff first. So I see some appeals out there, and you can just see it's just like educate. So it's just like, here, read all these stats, listen to all this information. And I think what the mistake is there is that you've jumped in before someone has made an emotional decision to be on board with what you're talking about. So it's like the same in personal conversations, right? You don't start just like blah, like just talking at someone. You've got to build that rapport first and understand what they care about, and then share information.
And how do you combat? I mean, it's noticeable. I mean, I notice it in myself. I notice it in friends, family members. Our attention spans have really been declined. I mean, it's like a gerbil, right?
Yes.
We're constantly, there's so much coming at us, so many different messages, and you have emails and texts and social media, and just everything is coming at us so fast that we're not paying attention to anything. How do you break through that clutter?
Yeah, and I feel that too. Even as someone being aware of that, I still find myself like I probably give like half a second to some, like if I'm looking on social media or something, like half a second before I decide to move on. So it's that quick. So I think, well, two things come to mind. One is grabbing attention. It's so important. So getting the attention first, and then it's the connection, like what I was saying about the emotional. Because I do think, even though we're so used to moving in like so fast paced and just like so boatloads of information, like we're so overstimulated all the time, I think it's actually such a treat when you can slow it down and just go along. For example, to be told a story and be able to go along with that and feel like with the pace of it, like it's a journey, and then you're getting to experience it, just to slow down and actually enjoy that. So I think for me as a writer in fundraising, if I can give someone that experience to just stop just from all the rush and just go with me on this experience and hear this story and feel part of it.
Yeah. I love how you said it's a treat to slow down, because we so seldom get to slow down.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think it's like I was even telling my son yesterday in the car, because he was asking questions about what I did as a kid growing up. And I said, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have screens. I said, we played outside a lot. And he was like, what? You didn't have screens? Like, it was so, I even see it now, like this whole generation just growing up, just like screens and just like, like that, like instant gratification, and like constantly every second is filled with entertainment.
Yeah, that's very real. And, I've noticed my kids, one of them leaves his phone on a different floor when he needs to really focus on homework.
Yes. I do that with my writing too. I have to put my phone in another room because I don't even notice it myself reaching for my phone to look at messages, even though I'm like, I know I'm busy, but I still do it.
Yeah. No, I think it's very real. So maybe that's our challenge to kind of put it further away or put it in a little lockbox.
Yep.
You talked about the effective message, and I love that idea, starting with the decision in their heart. As a writer, what is your writing process? How do you approach a blank page? Where do you start?
Yeah. So when I talk to other writers and they tell me they struggle with writer's block or just getting the words out there, one thing I find really effective is to just completely let those walls down and just blah onto the page. Just let all the thoughts out. If anything, it feels like a race to get everything out of my brain and onto the paper. And don't edit. Don't be a perfectionist. Just get all those words out, even though it's not the right, it doesn't have to be exactly what you want to say, but just get everything out first and then come back to it. So what I normally do is I get everything out and then I come back and I go, what I was saying before about the process is, okay, emotional storytelling first, rational thinking second with all the facts and stats. And then I'm going to make it all point towards a call to action. So that's kind of like a 1, 2, 3 for me in that editing process.
Yeah, I like that. I do that as well, but sometimes it's more, I frame it out. Like, what am I trying to say before I start writing?
Yes.
Kind of
that's more, I'm not as organized like that. That's a good idea.
It's just to, get details that are not pertinent out of the way. It's sort of like, what am I trying to say?
Yes.
But I think both methods, I've worked both ways and they both have merit, so. There's a lot of perception, misperception, a lot of discussions and not just in our space, but in general. You can't go to a conference, you can't tune into a webinar without hearing about artificial intelligence. And most people think of artificial intelligence as generative AI, so ChatGPTs of the world. Is AI coming for writers' jobs?
It's such a debate amongst writers. And I think there absolutely is a level of fear that, what if we get to, like, writers are just redundant because everything is AI. But what I've seen, I can spot the difference. Like, it's so easy to spot AI generated content. Like, I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I can see immediately when it's a bot commenting or when there's a post that's written by AI. So I think what's happened is the opposite is happening. Instead of replacing writers, AI, because we now have this like sea of mediocre content that is pumped out by AI where it's quantity over quality, really good human created writing stands out so beautifully against AI now. So if anything, it has made, and I'm talking about good writers, maybe not the same for ones who aren't creating great copy, but the good stuff out there that's unique and feels human, that to me has been actually become highlighted. And I think it's almost like a premium special thing when you can have a human writer create content for you as opposed to just feeding everything into AI.
Yeah. Do you find it useful for brainstorming, for copy editing, for any of those types of things?
Definitely. Because I see it more like, so AI doesn't write for me. So it's not doing my job, but it's kind of like an assistant where you can use it for help. So whether it's, proofreading, like looking up edits, looking for errors, or the brainstorming thing. Like sometimes I'll just be like yesterday I was writing and I felt like I'd used the word generous like 10,000 times on one page. I was like, I've got to think of more words. And it was the end of the day and my brain was slowing down. And so that's where AI can be an excellent thesaurus. So you can just be like, okay, give me 15 other words to say for this, or give me 15 other ways to say this. And it'll just blah, 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 blah. But then, so where my point is that AI is not doing the whole job. I still need to look through it all and say, yep, that one's the best, but I'm going to mold it a little bit to make it like this so it fits here.
Yeah. I love it for just organize it in alphabetical order or reorganize the information.
Yep. Yeah. Or turn this into a table or transcribe this screenshot.
I didn't know that I didn't know you could do that.
I just discovered this recently. So my friends and fellow writers, Julie and Brett Cooper, they mentioned it and I was like, what? I didn't know you could do this, because I had just spent half a day manually writing out because I had a client send me a whole lot of information in screenshots. And I was like, I could have saved 4 hours by just feeding that into AI. So yes, you can do that.
That's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So I wanted to shift gear to a little bit more fun aspect. And, kind of knowing you a little bit about your background. You grew up in New Zealand and then moved to Australia. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So it's funny because I am an Aussie and I am a Kiwi. So I'm both. And sometimes I'll kind of just go between depending on who I'm talking to. So if I'm with Australians, I'll say I'm Australian. But then when I'm around other New Zealanders, like my accent gets a lot more Kiwi when I'm around other New Zealanders as well. So I'm both. But my childhood was in New Zealand. And then when I was 14, I moved to Australia and lived there into my 30s.
And just to kind of level set with people, the two are not neighboring states. I mean, they're a sea apart.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because it's been interesting a few times over here in North America. People have thought they're the same country. And I say, no, they're definitely different countries. And it's a little bit like something people might not realize about Australia and New Zealand is the relationship between the two countries. It's kind of like a playful rivalry. So you don't want to get them mistaken for the other one. So if you meet an Australian and think they're a New Zealander, they'll get offended. And you meet a New Zealander and think they're Australian, they'll get offended. So
it's kind of like US and Canada used to be.
Yes, because, and I will say this as well, before I lived in the US, I couldn't tell the difference between the American and the Canadian accent, but I can now. But I think it's the same. A lot of people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an Aussie and Kiwi accent. Mm-hmm. But if you get them mixed up, they'll be like, what? No, I'm Australian or I'm a New Zealander.
I always laugh when non-Americans want to visit and they want to visit New York and Florida and California and maybe the Grand Canyon all in the course of a week.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've really noticed, that the difference between the states of the US, it's like going to a whole other country. They're so different, which I love. It's exciting. You can just travel your own country. Whereas I don't know if we have that much differentiation between the States and Australia.
Sure. So some of the burning questions I have about Australia.
Yeah.
And I wrote them down just to make sure that I get them out of the way. What exactly is Vegemite and what's the difference between Vegemite and Marmite? Because they're similar but not the same.
Yeah. So if anyone's seen it, it looks like car oil. Like it's like this like black sticky substance. But I think it's delicious. But that's because I grew up eating it. And if you don't grow up eating it, I don't think you can start as an adult. It's just gross because it's like this really salty kind of spread that you put on bread. So anyway, I like it, but I don't expect other people to like it. And it's not here in the US, so I haven't had it in a couple of years. So maybe I don't like it anymore.
Yeah. The other question for you is drop bears. Is that a real thing?
So this is a thing. It's part of an old Australian folklore thing about these bears they're like koalas, but they're bigger and they're ferocious. And they look for unsuspecting tourists to drop down and attack them. So but they're not real. And Australians like to pretend to tell new tourists to watch out for them. And they did it to me as well, because I grew up in a small town in New Zealand, very naive to the world. And then I moved to a big city, to Sydney in Australia. And so the Australians like to play a lot of tricks on me as the unsuspecting Kiwi.
Which is funny because there are plenty of fearsome creatures that can kill you in Australia.
I know. It's like you don't need to be making up these stories when there's already so many. And I will say this as well, that I've noticed about being an Australian living in America, is that the fear that people have of things like bugs or mice or snakes, cockroaches, all that sort of stuff. I don't think twice about any of that stuff. I think growing up in Australia, you're just like, whatever, that's just part of life, and you don't have that fear. And so I'm always surprised when people scream over a bug.
You're like, that's nothing. It's the plum that's going to kill you.
And I'm like, and what's next?
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope we can continue talking about writing and fundraising and content. And you will be my go-to source for all things Australia and New Zealand.
Yes, this has been great. And I feel like you're totally on the same page as me about all this writing and fundraising. So that's been great to hear from you too.
It's wonderful to make these really meaningful connections. And Tasha's been kind enough to introduce us. So she's like the fairy godmother of this podcast. So I appreciate it.
I love Tasha and I love the nonprofit Hive.
Yes.
So highly recommend anyone join it.
So that's a plug, and we'll make sure to let her know.
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Olga.